This might actually be one of the most informative bee videos that I've ever made, because I'm going to give a lot of detail that is random detail, but it's stuff that new beekeepers ask me and question all the time. And it's going to be random stuff that pops up throughout the video. So, for example, the two tools in my hand, one is a hive tool. It's really just a little mini crowbar, and it's used for prying boxes apart and wiggling the frames around because they get glued together pretty heavy with propolis. The smoker is absolutely necessary, and it's a calming agent that helps block the smell of the queen's pheromones, and it scares the bees also and triggers an effect where they assume forest fire out in nature. So they're going to drop down into that hive out of your way, but they'll also do something really interesting, and they're going to start to consume honey and nectar in case all of those bees have to fly away from that forest fire to live somewhere else. You can see there I used that hive tool to pry apart these pieces of the hive. The part I just flipped up is the inner cover that goes inside the hive underneath the outer cover. I'm looking at a whole bunch of comb that got built up inside here, and it got built up inside here because I have on a feeder rim. You can see all that comb right there. Anything that's created with wax is comb. And there's new bees and old bees, and there's a whole bunch of larvae and all kinds of stuff down inside there. I'll get into more of that later on in this video. For now, I'm just going to set it off to the side. And I have two different boxes here. There is the multicolored one, and there's the solid white one. You can see they're two different sizes. The multicolored one is a little bit narrower, shallower is actually the term, than the one on the bottom. The one on the bottom that's solid white is called a deep or a brood box, and that's typically meant to be the part where the queen lays her eggs. The top box, the one that's multicolored, that is a medium honey super or a medium box, and we mostly use those for honey because once those narrower, smaller boxes are filled with honey, they can weigh like 60 pounds. They get super heavy, and imagine lifting one of those bigger boxes when it's full of honey. You're looking at like 80 plus pounds, and it's really hard on your back. So using smaller boxes for honey is typically the standard. I mix them up a little bit because I only pull frames of honey at a time. I typically don't remove a whole box. So this right here is a frame. The frame comes out of the boxes, and all that dark stuff on the top is brood, which is capped over eggs that are growing into bees. And on the bottom there, it's capped over honey. And you can see the bottom part, it's a little ripply but smoother, and that's the honey. So that's one frame from a medium box or a medium super. I always set that first frame off to the side, and then I'm going to start digging through this box pretty quick here, because what I'm trying to do, I'm out here to do a split. And a split is where I'm going to take one of these boxes and I'm going to move it to a new location and make a whole new hive out of it. So I have to go frame by frame, and some of these frames pull out hard. They haven't been moved since last fall, and the bees are masters at gluing things in place with propolis. I'm inspecting each one of these frames because the most efficient way, easiest way to do one of these splits is to find the queen and move her to the new location. So I'm trying to see if I can find the queen here, and what I did find, I'll flip it in the right direction, I found a queen cell. I got so focused on that queen cell, I didn't even notice the queen walking down here in the bottom corner. From this video, I feel like she might be a virgin queen, but I'm not completely positive. But I will tell you that I show a couple other virgin queens here in a minute. Some of these queen cells are clearly hatching out, and we'll get back to those as soon as I find them on the next set of frames. Knowing that there was a queen up on this frame, though, would totally change what I'm about to do here, but I didn't realize it until it was too late, and I have already done this split now that I'm going back and recording over this video. That little tool there in my left hand is a frame grip. They make those in a few different styles. Some have wooden handles, some don't. Some have springs, some don't. Mine had springs, but it broke many years ago, and I still prefer it over the new ones that I buy that have different style of handles, so I keep using it. We're going to take a look at this frame here, and it is mostly capped over honey, but there down at the bottom of this is a drone. You can see it, it's a little bit bigger than the rest of the bees. They have bigger looking eyes and almost look like mini tanks. They're like little tanks of the bee world. Drones are male bees and they do not sting, and they can bite, but it's not actually very common for you to get bit by a drone. Their only purpose in life is to find a virgin queen and mate with her and then die. It's kind of a sad life for the drone bees because it's rare that a drone bee manages to find a virgin queen to actually mate with. They're so useless, in fact, that in the winter, the drone bees are dragged out of the hive by the rest of the hive, and they are killed because they serve no purpose in the winter because we are not hatching any queen bees in the winter season. So I'm still going frame by frame here, and I'm going to show you on this frame. There are several different queen cells. That queen cell right here is actually opened up. It's not been capped over yet. And if you look super close, you can almost see a white little larva down in there. That little larva will eventually turn into a queen bee and fly out and get mated. I'm going to put this back in here. When I'm doing a split, I only want to have 2 or 3, 4 at the absolute max queen cells in the part of the hive that I move. The reason is the queen cells, if they all hatch at the exact same time, they're all going to produce a virgin queen, and those virgin queens could throw a swarm, and a good part of my bees are going to fly off with each virgin queen that tries to fly out of there. The reality of it is, the first queen that hatch is supposed to go around and kill all the other queen cells, but it doesn't always work that way. Now this is an interesting find to show you in this video. This brood actually is capped over drones. If you're going to have queens that get mated, you have to have male bees, and those are drones, and drones are bigger than regular female worker bees, so naturally their capped over brood is bigger, and it looks almost popcorny. It bumps out, it's very three-dimensional. You can see it sticking out there different than up at that very top by my hook where I'm grabbing on at. It's a little more flat, that's regular worker brood, and then it's just bumpy, 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 and all those bumpies are drones inside there. The bad part, the catch, is that those drones have bigger cells so that they fit in there, but that's also preferred by varroa mites because they have more space. So the more drone brood, the more likely you are to have varroa mites. Now also looking on this frame, there's, I believe, 7 queen cells on here. That's up to at least 10 queen cells just in this top box so far. If I had all 10 of those hatch out, I'm going to have a whole mess of swarms all over the place, whether it's one giant one or several small ones. I'm going to scrape all of these off, and I know that's probably making some of you big-time beekeepers sick because I could try to cage them and catch them and sell them, but that's not what I'm here for. I'm not in the business of selling virgin queens or even mated queens unless I'm selling a nuke box. I just want to make a split and make another successful hive. So now that I've scraped them off, I'm just going to leave them lay there on the ground and pop this frame of drone brood right back into place. Next frame is also very packed with bees, and I'm going to pick off another queen cell right here at the very beginning, and then there's another one up farther that's got to go. This hive is just ready like crazy to swarm, especially now that I see there was a virgin queen running around. It may have already swarmed and the original queen took off, but that's a lot of queens inside this one hive if they all hatched at the same time. I'm going to spend more time picking queen cells off than what I'm going to spend actually working on this split. I'm looking real close on here because there's a lot of drones running around on this frame, and the more drones, the harder it is to actually find the queen, but I didn't see her, so I'm going to put this back and move on to the next frame. It's a pretty windy day. We actually had some rain earlier, and we're currently under a tornado watch even. So that's an interesting time frame to be doing this, but it's the chance I got. I'm hoping to get a couple splits done today, and before it rains, get all my mess cleaned up and get back in the house. If you're wondering what I'm pointing to, I promise it's nothing exciting. It's just another queen cell. I'm just going to rip that baby right off of there. That makes like queen cell number 15, I think, just in this upper box. It's insane. Smash it, leave it alone, put the frame back in. I'm running out of frames here in the top. This next frame that I'm going to pull out, it's actually got a whole bunch of pollen stored up in it. And I haven't really showed you pollen yet, so I'm going to pull this out, take a quick look at it for a queen, and then I'll bring it over and show you the different colors of pollen down inside here. It's hard to see, but there's some yellows, there's some oranges, there's some browns. It's pretty colorful when you get it fresh and right out in the sunlight. There's so many different colors to the different pollens these bees collect. It's incredible. And there's no queen on here, so I am moving along to the next one. This would be so hard without this frame grip. If you're just starting getting your beekeeping stuff, you have to get a frame grip. I pull this out here and it's hard to see down in there, and I'm not going to really take a ton of time to show you on this one, but there's nectar. You can see it's super shiny, and that super shiny, that liquidy looking stuff in there was nectar. It's not honey yet because it's not been capped over, and it's not ready to harvest yet because it's not been capped over. Honey has to be kind of dehydrated or dehumidified, and the moisture has to be removed by the bees before it is actually turned into honey or preservable honey, because honey itself never goes bad. It's very sugary. So this is liquidy. It wouldn't taste well. It wouldn't preserve right. If you were to try to jar it, it would go bad and actually turn into mead, more than likely. So we always leave the uncapped honey or uncapped nectar inside those frames and never harvest those ones. I'm going to pop these frames back into place here. Some of them aren't working their way in right, so you have to kind of push on them with that hive tool some to get them to drop down into place. And then I'm going to get ready to move this top box, because while I'm doing this, I didn't realize I had a queen up top. I only now realize that as I'm going back and looking at this video. I'm going to put my inner cover over top of that medium super. Give them a little smoke to calm them back down. Got to block out those pheromones. I think I must have accidentally crushed a bee because they got a little more angry with me all of a sudden. Just now, you missed it, I took about 10 minutes and I went over and got a screened bottom board, put it over there behind me where I'm going to move this box to, and I'm not going to just carry it and not show you what's happening. I'm going to just turn the camera and you can see from a distance, because it's really not that exciting. This is me making a split, and from what you can see here and your imagination, you can piece it all together. There's a bottom board over there that this box is going to sit on, and I'm going to just set it right on top there, and bam, I have a new hive. So I didn't know at the time, like I said, that there was a virgin queen in that top box, and I left 3 queen cells. So my hope is that that virgin queen will run around and she will cut open those queen cells and kill the unhatched queens inside. That is what freshly hatched virgin queens typically do. They will go around the hive and kill off any of the queens that haven't hatched yet. And then if more than one hatched at once, they'll fight to the death, and one of them will come out triumphant, and that's going to be the queen of the hive that will win over all of those worker bees. So there's my new hive over there. Here is my remaining hive that, as far as I know, the queen is in the bottom down in here. So I'm going to go through this hive frame by frame. I might rush through some of this a little bit because there's not anything here that I'm going to see, I don't expect, that we haven't already seen. So let's take a quick look here. This is a deep box, like I was saying. This is painted solid white just because that's what I had. There's no rhyme or reason to the colors necessarily. So a deep box or a brood box is what we want the bees to lay eggs in. The eggs, the larva, the brood weighs incredibly less than the honey, and I can pick up 2 of these brood boxes for every 1 full honey super, and probably even then there's still space for more weight. You can see the frames that go down inside here are quite a bit bigger than what they are inside the medium honey supers. I promised you that I'd speed this up a little bit, so I am. I'm going to go through this quick. I'm going to set this first frame off to the side. A lot of people always say to take the frame on the far end, but I take whatever one I can wiggle loose the easiest because, man, some of those are in there hard, and the harder I have pulling it out, the more bees I'm going to harm. So I'm slowing this down right here because there is another queen in this hive. So this one is definitely a virgin queen. And she is mixed right in with a whole bunch of other bees. So I'm going to freeze the frame here in a second, and I'm going to kind of circle her. Now that you can kind of see where she's at, you can follow her a little bit here in slow motion. She's got more of a pointed body. She's a little bit bolder color than the rest of the bees. Right now she's not mated, she's never flown, so her wings are even tucked together and stubby. You can kind of see the little point on her end there. She is less likely to sting than a worker bee, but she can sting. It just means she's going to die, and she won't be able to go out and get mated for this hive. So they only will mate in midair. I'm going to actually pull this off to the side here. I lost sight of her, and if I lost sight of her, that means you probably lost sight of her. Okay, found her. I'm going to show you one more time here real quick. And I'll freeze the frame again and circle her. You can see her pointed little body right there. And follow her the best you can. You can see how quickly she just moves right along there and blends in with the bees. Her movement is usually a little more rapid and sporadic, which makes her a little bit easier to find and follow. So now I know I have a queen in both boxes. I didn't know it at the time. I was excited thinking I only had a queen in this box. Even though it was a virgin queen, I still had a queen down here. So that is good news. I'm gonna keep going through these frames because now that I know I have a queen, I don't want a queen cell. If another queen cell hatches, I risk having a swarm if both virgin queens take off and fly. I know I sped through a whole lot of that, but I promise you didn't miss anything exciting. But here I'm going to show you what some uncapped brood looks like. It's hard to see because there's so many honeybees and the sun isn't out that great, but down inside those cells you can see white little C-shaped doodads, and those little C-shaped doodads are honeybee worker bee larvae. I'm going to see if I can find another spot here. I actually blew on that spot. Blowing on a frame scares the bees away for just a second, and then they come right back to tend to those little larvae. The bees that tend to the larvae are nurse bees. Throughout their short life, worker bees have several different jobs that they do. Some of those jobs include foraging for nectar and pollen, and some of the jobs are inside the hive and are cleanup duty and nurse bees where they take care of the young larvae. Some of them actually are communication bees where if one of those little foragers finds a really good stash of pollen, it lets the other bees know where that pollen is at through what they call a waggle dance. It's actually a series of moves in circles and wiggles that tells the bees locations. Some of the bees are on queen duty and they do everything from feeding her by mouth to cleaning up after her when she goes to the bathroom, because she is the only bee in that hive that will go to the bathroom in the hive. The rest of them all fly out to go to the bathroom. Some bees are on guard duty, and those bees are in that hive to protect it, whether it be from other insects and pests like beetles, moths, and wasps, or from people or skunks or other animals. Those bees are ready to sting and ready to fight, and once one of them gets crushed or panicked, it emits a pheromone that just triggers a rapid response, and all of those other guard bees are on top of it. Here we have a nice frame of pollen, but we also have another virgin queen. I'm not going to circle this one, but I am slowing down the frame a little bit here so you can hopefully spot her easier. The easiest way to learn how to spot these virgin queens, and any queen for that matter, is to do it without any aid. Some queens come with a little dab of paint on their back, and some don't. The dab of paint is a great way to make it easier to spot her inside that hive, but it also makes it harder to learn how to spot one without any paint on her at all. So my inspection here is pretty much done. I know I have 2 queens in this hive. Both of them are virgin queens. They'll probably fight to the death. However, if they stay on opposite sides of the hive like this, there's a chance this hive may swarm. There's not a whole lot of brood in it. There's not a whole lot of larvae in it. So swarming could be a problem. But I think that given the fact that the temperatures have been so warm, even if it does swarm, it'll be just fine. And they're more likely to kill each other than to swarm, because these worker bees are not going to allow 2 queens for long. The last thing here that I'm going to do before I consider these splits completely done is I'm going to take 2 frames that have quite a few bees on them, and I'm going to walk them over to this split, and I'm going to shake those bees into this box that I moved. Most of these bees are going to know that their location has moved, and they're going to fly right back home. And I need bees in there that won't fly home. I'm hoping that by shaking some extra frames in this box that I'll get some worker bees and nurse bees in there, and all of those bees will help keep this warm and keep that larva heated to a point that it's going to start hatching. I need that brood to hatch here quick so that I can put another box on here and get another really good hive established that I can start producing some honey off of. So I shook that frame, and shaking's the easiest way. A lot of people try to brush their bees, and that hurts the bees and really pisses them off. Just give it a good solid shake, and those bees fall right off into the hive. They're going to climb down in there, and hopefully, with a virgin queen being in there that I didn't realize at the time, they're going to just make that their new space, and they're going to help that hive succeed. All that's left to do now is to put the covers back on this hive. Again, as far as parts go, that is the inner cover right there. So if I start from the base of the plastic and work my way up, I have the bottom board, the brood box, the inner cover, and the outer cover. And then I put a brick on top, and that brick is laying flat because there's a queen inside there. If there was no queen, or if it was just queen cells, I'd stand it up.